Genesee County has established the COVID Response Senior Housing Program to provide relief for senior housing facilities impacted by COVID-19. This video will detail the reimbursement process for senior housing facilities that have received grant funding through the COVID Relief Senior Housing Program. Once your application has been reviewed, you will be notified of the approval or denial of the application and the amount of the grant award. This amount can be up to $10,000. After you are notified of the grant award amount, you will be required to sign a one-year grant agreement between your facility and the Genesee County Metropolitan Planning Commission. Now that you have your grant award amount and your grant agreement is signed, it is time to start filling out the reimbursement request. Reimbursement requests can be for any eligible expenses that occurred after March 16, 2020 and before March 31, 2021. You may submit multiple reimbursements as your facility accrues expenses if you do not have eligible expenses that total the grant award at this time. Eligible activities include support to senior housing facilities for responding to COVID-19 for items such as PPE, COVID testing, facility cleaning, technology for telehealth, and other supplies and services for seniors that respond or prepare for the coronavirus pandemic. Minor renovations that do not cause permanent changes to the building are permitted. For example, if you would like to install plexiglass screens in high traffic areas, this would be acceptable. Any renovations that are not removable will not be permitted. We will now go over some examples of ineligible expenses. Grant funds may not be used for administrative costs, expenses that do not go directly towards responding to COVID-19, personal expenses not associated with the agency operations, such as food or transportation costs for employees, fees, penalties, legal expenses, or fines, construction or major rehabilitation of buildings, and lastly, the sales tax on any items purchased. If you are unsure if something is eligible or not, please do not hesitate to contact the GCMPC office. You may be asking yourself, what exactly will GCMPC be looking for when I submit my request? The first thing that we will be looking for is that the reimbursement request is for expenses that are eligible under the grant and that those expenses occurred during the accepted time frame, which is March 16, 2020 until March 31, 2021. We will also be looking for documentation that shows purchase backup. This would include any invoices, receipts, purchase orders, or any other type of purchasing documentation showing the items that the reimbursement request is for. It is important to note that if purchases are made with a credit card, you must provide the purchase backup and the credit card statement showing the balances paid. If purchases are made with a check, please include a copy of the check or the check number from the purchase. All of this information and documentation will be summarized on a reimbursement request and accomplishments report that will be explained shortly. When reviewing the request, staff will make sure that the reimbursement request and all required documentation are complete and sufficient. Additional documentation may be requested if what is provided is not believed to be adequate. Staff will be looking to ensure there is not a duplication of benefits with the reimbursement request. Staff will also be reviewing the accomplishment data, which will be information on residents served with the grant funding and their demographics. It is important to include accomplishment data with every reimbursement request because this data is submitted to the United States Department of Housing and Urban Development, also known as HUD. The following screen will go over filling out the reimbursement request form and accomplishment data information. On this screen are the 2 pages of the reimbursement request and accomplishment report. We will walk through each section of the document. Section 1 contains project information. The reporting period should indicate the time frame of the funds the reimbursement request is for. For example, if your facility is requesting reimbursement for COVID-related supplies purchased for the month of June, you would simply include June 2020 in this section. Section 2 is to briefly describe what accomplishments have been achieved with this funding to date. You will detail how this funding has helped with preparing for, responding to, or preventing COVID-19. Section 3 is where you will detail the requested expenses. In this section, you will detail each expense using the purchase backup documentation that is submitted to separate the expenses. Section 4 is to ensure there is not a duplication of benefits with this funding. You will provide a description of any other sources of grant funding your business has received for COVID-19 response. If you fail to report other sources of funding that your agency has received for COVID-19 response, you may have to pay back your grant allocation to GCMPC. Section 5 is for reporting the demographics of the residents served. Please fill out this section to the best of your knowledge and ability, as this information is reported to HUD. Section 6 is a reminder that all items included on the reimbursement request must be verified by purchase backup documentation. Now that we have covered everything, you are probably wondering when you will receive your funds. Staff will process the request within 15 business days of receiving all required documentation. Within 15 days of your submission, a paper check will be mailed or electronic deposit of funds will be complete. For those receiving paper checks, this means that your funds may arrive after 15 business days. Throughout the one-year grant agreement that you have signed with GCMPC, you will have to submit quarterly performance reports for your agency until all funds under the grant agreement are expended. This is a requirement of the CARES Act per HUD. GCMPC staff will notify all senior housing facilities in a timely manner when quarterly performance reports are due. If you still have questions regarding the reimbursement process or any other aspect of the COVID response grant, please do not hesitate to contact Damon Fortney, our lead community development planner that is managing CARES Act funding. Thank you for taking the time to listen to this short video on the reimbursement process.